we're going to make a version of this cute little treat container. The one we're going to make today is a bit larger than this one. This one measures 1 inch on each side around, and then the length is 4.5 inches. And this ties right here, and when I untie it, you'll see what happens when I get to the next one. It's such a pretty bow, I don't want to untie it right now. But when we get to the next one, you'll see that this top flap and the one underneath it fold over, and you can fit about 10 starburst in here. You can fit a bunch of kisses as well. But we're going to make a larger one that measures 1.5 inches on each side. And I'm going to have measurements for both of them up on my blog, as well as an in-between measurement, one for a medium-sized box that is 1.25 inches on each side. So let's get started. I'm going to be using Evening Evergreen, and I need a piece that measures 7.5 inches square. Seven and a half by 7.5. What's nice about the small box is you can get 2 from 1 sheet of cardstock. However, for this larger box, you can only get 1. We will also need a piece of designer series paper. I am bringing in a piece of the painted Christmas paper. It looks like this on one side and this on the other side. And for this, I need a piece that is 12 inches long and 1.25 inches. I can measure on this other side here. I'm measuring down here. 1.25 inches wide. Okay, and that's all we need. I'm going to put this away because even though I can score with this paper trimmer, I've mentioned a few times about the Simply Scored tool. I want to bring that out and show you how it works. So this board has measurements along the left and along the top. I don't use some markers, but you can place some markers in here. And mine, I think, have been stored someplace else. There's a place in here where you can store them, but they're not in there because I never use them actually. There's a spot for a stylus down here at the bottom. And I'm going to measure on one of these 7.5 inch sides. I'm going to score at 1.5, 3, 4.5, and 6. So that's every 1.5 inches. Then I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to score at 1.5 from each end. And for this, I actually like to rotate it and make sure it is truly 1.5. It's the same from both ends, just in case I've measured a little bit wrong on my box. That's all we need our Simply Scored board for. But you can see how if you're doing a bunch of these, it is just so easy to do. So now we need to cut a few pieces off this, but let's burnish it first. I'm going to fold on all the score lines and give it a nice burnish with my bone folder. This will keep things nice and straight. I'm going to do it in the other direction on those 1.5 inch ones. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut off all 4 corner squares. May be hard for you to see, but I'm just cutting on the score lines. And actually, for this tab that's next to it, I'm going to miter in, but just on the side tabs. And I'm going to cut on all these score lines. Again, I'm cutting this corner off, so the one I'm cutting off, I'm going to miter next to. Okay, and sometimes I end up tearing a little bit. Just trim that edge right there. And I want to, this one that I've more mitered, and this one, I'm going to miter the other side of that tab as well. Just helps your boxes go together a little bit neater and cleaner. Another thing that you can do is just trim off a little bit of these tabs. It just helps in case your measurements were a little bit off. It will just hide some of that. I'm going to miter this one again right up to that point and cut that corner off completely. I'm going to cut on each of these score lines. Again, this one's being cut off, so I'm going to miter there and cut clean off here. Oops. Cut far enough. Miter the ones that were attached to the edges. So the only ones you're not mitering here or cutting off are these very middle tabs. And again, I'm just, and there's no amount that I'm cutting off here. I'm just cutting an amount off. All right, let me get rid of those scraps. Now we're ready to assemble this box. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to use my Stampin' Seal Plus. Because I'm using a box, I want to use a very strong adhesive, which is what Stampin' Seal is, or Stampin' Seal Plus is, I should say. Now, when you are running this, you want to make sure that you are not, you're not flicking, checking really hard off the page, because what's going to happen then is it's going to run off the track, and you don't want that to happen. We're only mitering, we're only adhering on these pieces that were mitered. I'm going to do that on the other end as well. You can also use some tear and tape. Okay. And then we're going to just fold those tabs in and make our box nice and square. Truth be told, I don't know which adhesive I like better, Stampin' Seal or tear and tape. I kind of like tear and tape better. Sometimes it's a pain to tear it, with my fingers, but I don't know, I'm used to it. So this is how the box opens. So you can see you can put a bunch of stuff in there. And I'm going to close it, and it doesn't matter which tab is closed. Now we need to create a wrap, and that's what this particular piece was for. But I want to find a way to attach that ribbon. I'm going to bring in a tag punch. And I don't believe this one's current, but I believe there's a tag topper punch in the catalog. But any tag punch will do if you have some decorative end like this. If there's no hole, you can just punch a hole yourself. But I'm going to slide this in here, and I'm working from the back side to make sure that I have it centered. And then I'm going to punch it. Again, I'm making sure it's centered on the back, and then I punch. And I'm done with that. This box really does go together very quickly. I'm going to be tying my bow, but not in the center. I'm going to tie it a little over at the edge because I want to attach a tag as well. So you can see I'm just kind of wrapping this around with my fingers, kind of helping form the edges to the box. And that's where it's going to be. I just need to tie a ribbon around it. But before I do that, I'm going to go back in over here and just use my fingers to really score those. I can use my bone folder as well, but it's such a small piece that it works just as well using your fingers. And then I like to adhere just a little bit of adhesive down here at the bottom. Let me find where my top is. Okay, that's my top. So this is my bottom. I'm gonna center this as best I can. And then I'll press down that where that tape is, and that holds it now. Makes it a little bit easier to work with. And now I just need some ribbon. And let's see, I've got this glittered organdy ribbon that I can use, and I think I probably need, 12 to 14 inches or so. We'll see. Hopefully I cut that right. I eyeballed it. And I can just tie this in a bow right here. Before I do that, maybe I want to tag though. So let's say we've got this little red tag, and I've just gotten the to and from stamp from the Tidings and Trimmings set, which goes with some of these pieces go here, and I could have actually stamped this tone on tone onto my evergreen if I wanted to. I really wanted this to go very quickly, so I'm not. You could stamp in Evening Evergreen on here as well. Or you can do the Versamark. I think actually I'm going to go ahead and keep this very simple, and I'll get out my Evening Evergreen ink. Oh, I do need to make this a tag though. I'm not going to use the same punch. I'm going to use one of these. I think it's, I don't know what this is called. Sorry, I should have looked it up. But this cuts different sizes of labels. And this, it'll take 1/2 inch labels or 3/4 inch or 1 inch wide labels. And there's 2 different styles on each one. I'm using the middle one, the 3/4 inch, just turning it over, making sure it is centered and straight on there. And it is. I need just a little hole punch in here. I'll manually do that. And let's take my little to from. Stamp that right on there. Bring my gift back. I'm going to thread this through the little hole. I can get my fingers to work. There we go. And we need to just tie this up in a bow. Obviously, whatever you're going to put inside, do that first, because it makes, you don't want to tie the bow and then untie it and tie it again. Bows are tricky enough, especially on camera. Now let's see, let's just adjust the ends of my bows here a little bit. This is that glittered organdy ribbon. I'm not sure that I love the glittered organdy ribbon for this particular project. It's not bad. It does add a little bit of bling. I wanted to use this particular one, ribbon, because it was a little bit wider than the ribbon that I used here, which was the crinkled seam binding, but that's nice and white too. Just trim the ends, which is why you don't really want to do that until you've got the candy in it, because you'll always have to trim your ends differently. And there we go. There's a cute little gift. So you can see how these compare size-wise. This one probably holds twice as much, at least. And just a cute little gift. And that is the 5th Sunday of Christmas.